Greetings and felicitations.
Hip hip hurrah, tally ho.
I'm Nayar.
And I'm Kavora.
We are board game collectors, board game players, and we're very excited to be able to speak with the designer of StarTrek, the 5-year mission cooperative board game. Welcome to the show, David E. Whitcher. Thank you for joining us, David.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We really love your game.
Oh, thank you very much.
Hey, David, give us a background. How did you get into Star Trek? Before we even talk about the gaming aspect, how did you trek yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I am approximately the same age as Star Trek. I was born in 1966, and I, of course, picked it up in reruns. My uncle watched it quite a lot, and I, as a young child, watched it with him and enjoyed the original series. And then, of course, by the time I was a bit older, I guess it would be my early 30s by then, the original series was really hard to find on TV. And then all of a sudden, Next Gen popped up. And it was wonderful to, have that come back. And then, of course, the success of that just led into all the other series. Voyager and DS9, of course, at that same time. So it was really wonderful to just have that, plethora of Star Trek out there to watch. And then we can see it kind of evolving as time goes on into different things that we saw, including the most recent, the Discovery, which is really quite a different animal altogether.
Excellent. So you have a deep background in Trek. How did you get into gaming?
I've always loved games growing up. I loved playing games. In fact, when I was really, really little, if I didn't have anyone to play with, I would take board games down off the shelf and play by myself.
That's cool, because I did that too. I haven't met anyone else who did that.
Yep. I just kind of go through the moves. Now, they were very simple kids' games at that time, so there wasn't a lot involved. It was kind of rolling dice and seeing what happened. So it really didn't matter if there were other players. It wasn't games that were interactive. And then, as I grew up, I played, all sorts of games, and including lots of role-playing games. And then, of course, as I, played a lot of Star Trek games over the years, including, I think, in high school, we played a lot of Starfleet Battles, which was a great, combat game.
Yeah, we have it. It's very involved.
Yeah, it's very lengthy unless you're doing very small engagements. But I had a group of friends that were really kind of hardcore gamers, and we would spend entire, Saturdays or Sundays playing one game of Starfleet Battles.
That's excellent.
Obviously, you've taken that passion for Star Trek and for gaming and combined it into this incredible game called Star Trek 5-Year Mission. We love it, and you're not new into the gaming world. You have some background with other games that you've developed. So how did you take your passion for gaming to that next level to be a game developer?
Oh, yeah. So it's kind of funny. I was playing games regularly with a regular group of guys. And then it came down that what happens to a lot of people is people graduate from college. They start getting families, they start moving because of jobs, and all of a sudden your game group disappears. And so I ended up playing a lot of games online, a lot of computer games. And my wife one year bought me this little piece of software which you could design little abstract games in. And I played around with it, enjoyed it, and I made a game I was kind of proud of, and I posted it online, and people said, wow, this is really good. So I got, encouraged and started making other sorts of games other than just abstract games. And that was way back in somewhere around 2003. So it's something that's developed over a long period of time, starting from simple abstract games to board games and card games and dice games, and just different things, experimenting along the way. I'm more of a tinkerer when it comes to game design. I'm not one of those people that has an idea and puts it fully down on paper and then tacks it all down. I like to kind of fiddle with it and see what evolves out of it, what feels most natural with it.
That's awesome. So I assume you're a board game collector, just as we are?
Yes.
Do you have any particular Star Trek board game that's at the top of your list?
Well, it's actually not a board game. My favorite Star Trek game to date, and this includes my own, unfortunately it's not my own, is the 1994 collectible card game, the Star Trek customizable card game. This was one that came out at a time when I still had my gaming group. And I got a friend, it came out, I got convinced a friend to get a set, and we started playing it, and we went to a small local convention here in Michigan. I live in Michigan. And it happened that there was a small tournament going on there. And so after just playing this game for like a week or so, we actually joined into a tournament and played and placed fairly well. I placed in the top 3. Although it was a very small tournament because the game was, pretty new at that time. And it wasn't well known. It actually went on, and there was lots of expanding materials and things to it. And it really has quite a good following. It's still an excellent game and explores a lot of things in the customizable game world that a lot of games at that time didn't even consider. So it's got a lot going for it.
Yeah, when we were going through our games to pull out 5-Year Mission, we pulled out our box of the CCG game, and we still have thousands of those cards. The graphics on them are beautiful too. I mean, they're so collectible even if you don't play the game.
Yes. And I've being in the game world, I actually had the pleasure of meeting Roland Tesh, which is one of the designers of the game. So it's kind of fun when you get to do things like that in the gaming world.
Yeah, it is. Just like we're so thrilled to be talking to you because you designed this game.
So let's talk about 5-Year Mission.
Oh, absolutely.
How did you start this project? Was it pitched to you, or did you have the idea first?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny thing. As a game designer, generally you're told don't try to do licensed games, because if you go to a publisher, you don't know if they're interested in licensed games. There's very few publishers that specialize in that, in licensed games. And so if you go to a publisher and you say, well, I have this Star Trek game, or I have this Adventure Time game, or whatever license it is, and they might say, well, this is a great game and we might actually publish it, but we don't want to go through all the trouble to get that license and all the extra money. It's a lot of work. It's working with lawyers and there's side contracts and all kinds of things going on that are involved. So I just happened to been working with Mayfair Games for many years as a demo person. And I'd even pitched some games to them previously that they turned down. And I had been, I think it was 2013, and it was after their Star Trek Catan had been out, and I was talking to their head of sales and marketing. And he said, this is going really well. We still have this license, and this license allows us to not just publish this game, but to publish other Star Trek games. We'd love to do another game. And knowing how things are in the market, I thought, well, no one's going to walk up to them very likely and say, I have a Star Trek game. So I decided to make one for them. And it took me quite a while because I came up with several ideas, and I looked out at the other Star Trek games that have been on the market over the years, and there's been quite a few of them. And there was not, it didn't really stand out, from the other works that were out there. And then I realized that there really wasn't much in the way of Star Trek dice games, and the ones that were out there were more like Yahtzee kind of games. Uh, you know, so I got this idea. I need to do a dice game, and it was like it just didn't come to me for a long time. And I was actually sitting in a doctor's office in a waiting room, waiting as you often do past your appointment time, waiting for the doctor to see you. And all of a sudden, this idea sprang on me how to do this. And I didn't have a paper and pencil. I didn't have anything to write with. So I had to scrounge and go up and ask for something to write with. And I started taking notes and got this idea down. And then the basic idea developed pretty quickly after that. Now, knowing that fandom is a huge factor in these games, I wanted to make sure the game was solid. And it wasn't just that people wanted to get this game because it was a Star Trek game. Because I've seen this with a lot of other properties where, I love this property. I love The Princess Bride, or I love, there's just a bunch of them out there. And then you get the game and you're a bit disappointed in the game. It has elements, from the storylines and things that are really fun, but the game isn't terribly replayable. So what I did is I put it out there for when I did testing under a different theme. I basically decided I was going to do the same idea, a ship and its crew, which was HMS Victory. So I did it as HMS Victory, which required me to come up with all these different kinds of things that were happening in the game, like naval battles and blockades and things that ships, tall ships of that time period would be doing as your challenges. And I tested that pretty much through the whole process until I actually, did the first showing of it to Mayfair. And when I, finally did, and then I revealed it, that it was Star Trek after actually showing it to them as HMS Victory, to know that they were really interested in the game and not just the Star Trek license.
I think that's smart, because when we're collectors, and we go like the first Star Trek game that ever came out, it's almost Candyland like.
Oh, it's hilarious. Yeah. That board game where basically you just roll the dice and you just move the steps. Yeah.
Yep.
And we know that all that is a general game, slap a label on it, and call it a Star Trek game. So we feel that pain.
Yeah.
But when we play this game, it's so interactive to the characters and to their skill sets. So it's, even though it's dice based, it's has a lot of logic to it, and it really ties in both with the original series and the next generation.
So when I originally approached Mayfair Games with this, it was only original series game. And I had spent quite a long time developing it and getting images for the cards and finding things in the episodes that made sense with what was going on, with the card effects. And literally sitting on Friday and Saturday night and watching episode after episode and stopping it and going, okay, 3 minutes and 12 seconds into this episode, I'm going to take a note down. This would make a good image for this card, because this makes sense because the ship is being damaged in this scene, or, the crew is being injured, or, different things like that. And so when they accepted it, they said, wow, this is great, but we want to do both series and we want to publish this in a year. Now you got to think that it took me a long time to go through the original series in a very slow fashion like that. And the original series compared to the next gen is rather small. The next gen is just a huge amount to go through. So it was a great challenge to go through all the episodes and pick out the things that we really wanted to highlight that also had those same feels, to them. The idea that, when something is happening on the card, it's like, yes, I remember this from the episode. This is kind of what was happening. Okay, yes, the Enterprise took damage. The crew is injured. There's this effect that keeps you from doing something. There's some hindrance going on, some roadblock. And so, fortunately, the artists that worked on the game, as well as one of the guys from marketing, were both huge Star Trek fans. So they helped me go through this and do this all in 1 year, which is, a monumental thing to do. Because not only did we have to get it, decide what we were going to use in a year, we had to get the art ready in a year. We had to get it to publication in a year. And, that takes time. So, basically it was 2014, and it says we need to get this ready for Gen Con 2015. So it was pretty fast and furious for that second part. I think it came together pretty well. All in all, I honestly, if I could have had another year to do it, I would have been pleased, because I think I could have even, refined it that much further. But I think it did turn out good.
That is interesting. So you did the research. You actually went through the episodes, and that's why it's so Star Trek-like, because you actually picked the things like damages and so forth, things that could actually happen, taking notes and putting it into the game.
Oh, yeah. And the other thing I did was I had to come up with a system to determine difficulties. So as you were asking about, how the game works, so basically you have 3 tracks of cards that represent, 3 alert levels. Okay. And, we have blue, which is... I thought was going to be controversial that we're going to use blue as an alert level. But
no one complained.
Yeah,
right?
but
No,
it makes
was
sense
not.
because we know the primary colors. Like when you play the game and you have it laid out, it looks beautiful.
Yeah. Blue is generally used for kind of special things, like when they land on planets and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's like special operations. Because otherwise the standard alert level is green. Mm-hmm. Just like traffic lights, green,
sure.
yellow, and and so we have blue, yellow, and red, and those are our difficulty levels. And so each one of these tracks, you pull cards every turn, and you have to, of course, keep up with these to make sure you're completing your missions on time. And if you don't, you fail missions. And if you fail too many missions, you get recalled. And you complete missions by placing dice on them. And so you have dice rolls. So that seems kind of very basic. Well, the thing is, each character in the game has their own special abilities, ways to affect the gameplay. And, Kirk, for example, can re-roll some dice. And he's actually the only character in the entire game that, gets to re-roll dice. And the reason is because Kirk cheats. We know that from the Corbel Knight. Not the Corbel Knight maneuver, the Kobayashi Maru. From the Kobayashi Maru. Just as Picard gets an extra dice because he's extra clever. And we see that throughout the episodes, how he outsmarts the aliens over and over again by just being extra clever. So he gets an extra die. And so all the characters have these special abilities. And that's where the interactive part of the game comes in. Because you're all working towards the same goal and you're placing dice together to complete these things. But it's when you use these abilities to help out the other players, that's when it comes together and you're a crew. It's, when you're able to do stuff like give dice to other players or heal the other players that need healed. Of course, the doctors do that. And things like, Spock, his ability, which is actually, I think, one of the hardest abilities to use in the game. But if you're really sharp and very Spock-like, I've seen players just use it beautifully. Someone that can really focus on that whole field at once and recognize the possibilities out there. I think it works pretty good.
Yeah, we like that you made it an interactive game, the way the cooperative game. The players have to work together, and I mean, it's just like the crew of the Enterprise. You play a certain character, and they all have to work together. It's a very interesting way to play a game.
And you can tell you have a background in role-playing games because each player has unique abilities to contribute to the team. And it has almost the feel of when we play Dungeons and Dragons, cooperative play of really focused in on the character's strengths, especially. And how you did that is quite amazing.
Yeah. And the more difficult part of the characters was, we came up with the 7 characters, which were pretty easy when it comes to the original series. We put all the real major characters in there.
And we have the bonus card, by the way. So we have the Janice Ram Wesley Crusher card as well.
Excellent.
To make it
and
8.
If you didn't know that, if you go out on Board Game Geek, there are fan-made character cards, which are actually very cool. When people do that, it really kind of shows me their appreciation for the game, and makes me feel really good that they feel like they want to be part of it, that they want to join in with it. And it's like fan fiction. It's like seeing people doing that, or people doing their own Star Trek series, or whatever that they do related with Star Trek. It's just great to see that. So I think some people would feel intruded on. I don't. I really welcome that.
Yeah, because it means people love your game, right?
Oh, yeah, it shows that they appreciate the core system, and by adding their own little touch to it, here's the thing: the right way to play this game. And people have asked me over and over about rules and this and that, and people go, "Well, I play it like this." And it's like, well, if your group likes to play it like that, that is fine. If that's how you're happy with playing the game, that is fine. This is how the rules are written. This is how I would suggest playing it. But, the communication failures. Some people just hate them. Some people love them.
It's so hard. It's so that's a frustrating one. We're using hand signals. We're trying to get around it as much as we can. Yeah. So
you're not even supposed to do that.
No, you're not. Well, yeah, it's just a lot harder that way.
You're literally not supposed to communicate. But I've had people tell me, it's like, yeah, I've taken those out of my set. I don't play with them. And I've literally had people say, I tore those cards up. And it was like,
oh,
wow. You really must dislike that if you tore them up. I would just stick them in a little baggie and put them in the box. And maybe someday someone will want to play with that.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, also, didn't we? So, we saw a video where Will Wheaton made a YouTube video to play explain how to play this game. Yeah. What do you think about that? We know Will is a Star Trek fan and a gamer.
So tabletop, his tabletop series. At the time that they were, I can't remember what season that was, maybe 3, 4. At that time, they had instigated a new policy that there had to be a representative from the company there while the game was being played. And so on very short notice, I got called from Mayfair Games, and they said they want to do this. Can you fly out there this weekend? And I said, well, that's a little short notice. And then they said, can you do it next weekend? And I said, well, when will I be back? And they say, well, you're going to be, going out on a Friday and or what was it? Flying out on a Thursday, doing it on a Friday, coming back on a Saturday. It was literally a whirlwind thing. And it was like, I went, I have a day job, and I went to my supervisor and said, I need to do this thing. And it was not a convenient time. It was a very busy time at work. And I said, I need to go out there and do this. And she said, well, this is a really busy time. And I said, so I can't do it? She goes, of course you can do it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I would not have gotten anywhere in the gaming business if I didn't have a great workplace that allows me to go off and spend, days at conventions many times a year. Just take off at odd times and do these things. So yeah, I flew out to Burbank. We taught the group of people how to play the game. Will, of course, had already played it. He came in and said hi to everybody, prior to taping. But Jesse and Jessica Chobot and all those, and also we had what they call the game director in there, and he was the one that was making sure the game was being played right and that everyone understand what was going on. And he was also the guy who came up with all the questions they ask him in the asides that they do at the end. So I stayed there for the taping and kind of made sure that when there were, let's say, grievous mistakes being made in the rules, that we stopped and we corrected them.
Oh, excellent.
That's awesome. Yeah.
It's one thing, just one biggest mistake you can make in the game, which I say don't make this mistake, is make sure you pull a card at the beginning of your turn every turn, because the game is very tightly put together and it's all about balance, and you will unbalance the game if you miss that once or twice in the game. Usually you'll just make the game way too easy. And all of a sudden, I've had these people say, well, this game is really very, very easy. And it's like, well, let me see. Did you do this? Did you do that? Well, we don't pay attention to that much. Well, that's probably why.
I think the last time we played, we kind of forgot a few times that you draw the card first, because we always want to roll the dice first.
And it throws things off immensely.
I've done it many times. You get into your turn, you think, oh, look, I have these dice. I want to do this. I want to do this. And you want to go right to doing those actions, and you forget to draw your card.
One thing that we did add is we have the shuttlecrafts, the micro machine shuttlecrafts from TOS and TNG,
Great.
and we keep that in our box, and we move the shuttle around to indicate who has play in action.
Oh, that's great.
So as you were saying that people make some modifications, we added something to it just because it's fun that way, and then everybody goes, I'm on the shuttle now. Shuttle comes to me.
Well, that's excellent. Yeah. I like to see it, and I like to see that the game still has some life. I mean, it came out in 2015, and as we know, Asmodee bought out Mayfair Games, just a couple of years ago, and Asmodee decided not to support the game anymore, which is unfortunate, because at that time I was working with Mayfair Games to do an expansion for it, and so there is an expansion that is unpublished.
Whoa! Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, well, I kind of got the idea actually from Settlers of Catan. Which, of course, was a Mayfair mainstay until they sold that off. And one of the expansions they did a couple of them, Traders and Barbarians, for example, was a set of a bunch of mini expansions that you could add into the game. So my idea was to give you a nice box set that had 4 mini expansions in it, and you could add each one in to add a little different flavor. One of them was shuttle missions. So you could have a special track of missions just for shuttles. And the key is when you're doing shuttle missions is your character was not on the Enterprise. So you could not do any of the standard missions while you were doing shuttle missions. So there was that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
And then there was a special set of cards that you would get a new win condition partway through the game from Starfleet Command. And so you'd have your standard win conditions that you would choose, and then depending on what difficulty level you're at, you would choose from one of the difficulty decks, and you would pick another card when you got to your halfway mark. So if you were, going for, your 12 cards, let's say, or your 12 successes, and you got your 6, then you would pull your card, and all of a sudden you'd have a special condition to meet besides your regular conditions. So there was several different things in there. There was some special transporter cards that allowed you to do some things. There was just a bunch of little mini sets, basically. And we, we're looking at, putting it out there for, a reasonable, $15.99 kind of price range because it was a mini set, but unfortunately, Mayfair apparently got an offer they couldn't refuse. Basically Asmodee just, said, look, we want everything you have. Here's a big sack of money. And the board members said, it's a good day to retire. And everyone signed off on it.
So what's the status of that as we speak?
Well, that's the thing. Let me see, 15. So, yeah, at this point, everything is off license now. So if I could find a new publisher, we could republish it. We would have to get a new licensing deal through Universal CBS, because that's what is required to do a Star Trek game. And then I could republish the game. It could be redone as, a different series.
So let me ask you, is it possible to self-publish these add-ons without using the Star Trek license the thing is, the primary colors of the cards, kind of like what Munchkin did with its very Star Trek-ish type games?
Yeah, I could do it as a parody, obviously, and that's protected under copyright law. Parody is one of those things that is really nice. But yeah, I could not use the name Star Trek. I could not use any of the names of the characters or anything from the series at all. Obviously you can't put a copyright on red, yellow, and blue.
Sure.
But
that's what we're saying. We see parodies, or we see kind of homages in other established games that are obviously trying to tap into the Star Trek fan market. Yeah.
But yeah, it'd be wonderful. I'm thinking right now it's USAopoly who has a Star Trek license. So if I went to anyone that was a publisher, I would probably go to them because they already have a license and they don't have to work out the negotiation. Assuming that their license is still holding. I know they did the Star Trek Panic version of Castle Panic, which I have, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh.
So right now it's just floating around in your head. There's no physical objects that are locked away in a warehouse anywhere.
No. It's all stuff on my computer and in my head, and still needs refinement. It's not at that final stage. And final stage is actually 90%. And the reason for that is when you go to publishers, they're going to want to make changes anyhow. Now, I was really pleased when I brought the game to Mayfair that they wanted to put it out with almost no changes whatsoever. It was like, we'd like to change some of this card art kind of stuff. And it's like wonderful. And they were actually the ones that suggested the communication failure. And I tested it out and I said, yeah, no problem. And it was to address the issue of in gaming what you call quarterbacking, is in cooperative games where you have one player who tries to run the whole team. And that shuts up the quarterback. He cannot give instructions to everybody else. Mm-hmm. And of course, the one in the blue deck, you can get rid of that one real easy. The yellow deck, pretty good. If you get the one out of the red deck, you're probably not going to be talking for most of the rest of the game.
It is that, and guess what? We pulled the last time we played. We pulled the red deck one, and the frustration level was so high, so it was hard.
Yeah,
but it was fun.
Well, yeah. I think that is fun, and the time missions add attention to the game that some people don't like. A lot of times I don't like to play speed things in games. I understand it. For some people, it's a little too much. But for me, that 2 minutes is actually a lot of time. I've run this game. I don't know, when we did the release of it at Gen Con 2015, they gave me 3 tables to run the game at, and pretty much had full crews almost every game. And I figured by the end of the weekend, we ran about 450 people through the game. Now, we call it butts and seats, because some of those were duplicates. Some people came back, wanted to play it again. So a lot of people played the game. And in seeing that, and we see when that timer comes out, turns can be very simple. Turns can be, I draw my card, I look at my dice, I make a quick decision, grab dice, roll them, place dice, pass my turn. That can take just a few seconds if you don't overthink it. And that means even with the 7 players, you can go all the way around and get back to that first player that started that timer very easily if everyone's, just doesn't try to figure out the most optimal thing to do. The most optimal thing to do is figure out how to roll lots of dice. The more dice you roll, the better chance you have of finishing that timer. So
Absolutely.
the more turns to go by, the better chance you have. And rather than sitting there and go, wow, I have this really difficult card over here that I should figure out. And it's like, no, you got a timer going off. And now, obviously, there's, your problems where you have your prime directive and your timer out. And
what I love about the dice is that you totally understand. Obviously, you're a Trek fan, but when we're playing it, we're noticing the blue dice are used for healing, the red dice are used for the engineering aspect. All the minutia of the game ties into the show.
Right. Yellow dice are the command dice, and that's why there's fewer of them. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and the other thing I did with the game, I hear over and over the years, people say, I don't like dice games because I always roll high or always roll low. Well, that's silly because dice are dice and they aren't affected by who you are. But I always roll high or always roll low. So what I did with the game is I actually made it so rolling low is good sometimes. As you see, sometimes you want a 1, sometimes you want a 2 or lower, so on and so forth. So I made it so there's a fairly good representation that all the dice rolls are valuable at some point in the game.
And that is good. Because you put a lot of thought into it, which is another thing that we can appreciate.
thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's been nice talking to you.
We'll continue to follow you as a game designer, and we encourage our listeners to, without a doubt, pick up 5-Year Mission by Mayfair Games.
My name's Ryan Case. I'm from Jackson, Mississippi, a member of the USS Hayes of Starfleet International. I honestly enjoy the game because there are so few co-op games that are meaningful. Usually it feels like one player is kind of captaining everybody else, but this game doesn't have that aspect to it.
My name is Lauren White. I am from Orlando, Florida. I'm commanding officer of the USS Haven. I enjoyed this game because while it was fun and easy, it did also involve a level of thought and strategy. And it kind of made it very engaging for everybody to play.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long, and may the Force be with you. Nanu Nanu.